Now I'm very excited to welcome back a man who should be everyone's go-to guy when it comes to MMA, and Lou Finnachiaro from gamlou.com and the Bout Business podcast. You can follow him on Twitter at gamlou. Lou, thanks for coming back on the show. Wow, did this UFC 294 event get exciting over the past few weeks, hasn't it?
Kiev, thank you so much for having me on. Your podcast is awesome. Your guests are excellent, and I'm tickled to be able to share some UFC thoughts. Yes, this is a really excellent card, and especially the main card is rife with great talent, maybe, some unfavorable matchups, but at the same time, some short notice stuff, some big names, a lot of intrigue, and a lot of unknown.
Yes. I mean, lots of intrigue and lots of unknown. But yeah, there's some fighters that definitely stepped up to the plate here, and we give them all the credit in the world because it made this event really what it was. And we'll get to that. Two main ones in the main card. But more importantly, for you MMA fans, or even if you're just kind of a fan, partial fan, this event doesn't exactly start at night, does it?
This is a Abu Dhabi event, and so our prelims will be Saturday morning, 7 a.m., and then the main card 11 a.m. on Saturday morning. So it's like omelets and omoplatas. So in one way, it serves me perfect because then I can watch baseball and some football after the fights are over. But you have to, it's an FYI. You're getting up early if you want to make the first fight.
And if you're going to want to get your bets, unless you get up at 6 a.m. Pacific time, you better get them in the night before because the prelims are getting started immediately here. But now you mentioned Abu Dhabi. I have a couple questions about it. I'd like you to give us a little introduction about the Abu Dhabi. And of course, they fought there before, but for any of us that are new to the MMA or new to the UFC, I'd like you to talk about the venue and how we might handicap these fights differently, if any.
Well, quickly, during COVID, Dana White and his tenacity hooked up with those Arab Emirates professionals, set up Fight Island, was able to execute his plan. And now, as COVID is cleared up and the UFC is now back into full-fledged traveling abroad and expanding their brand, of course, they reward Abu Dhabi for a number of reasons. They were there when they needed them, when the UFC needed them. As well, that's a great location to be able to expand their brand into all the Slavic countries, all the Muslim countries, Russia, and that side of the world. And the UFC is very aggressive in doing such. Further, we have to know that when we take an Ireland card or we go to London or Abu Dhabi, that some of these regional fighters are going to get highlighted, and oftentimes they may even be provided favorable matchups. And you can see some of that here on this card based on pricing. I, being a dog lover, love to try and go into the fight card and find one or two of those favorable matchups that may not go as everyone intends. We'll talk about one of those fights a little bit later, but one handicapping these fights must know that the Russians, the Kazakhstanis, the Indian fighter, those people from that region of the world, for the most part, are set up to do pretty well because that aids the UFC in their expansion in that area.
There you go. And they're maybe more, I guess, used to the time out there and the difference. The fights start very early in some of the Americans' time. Maybe it's a little different for some of our European fighters. I don't even know if we have that many. I mean, there's Brazilians in here, but I think that could make a difference, just your time clock in your head. And I would assume that some of these guys like Johnny Walker, Warley Alves, a couple others have went out there early, hopefully, and got their clocks adjusted there, Lou.
Walker surely did. He trains in Ireland. That wasn't as big a trip for him as it was for Warley Alves coming from Brazil. I'm not sure if Alves went out there early or not. But yeah, we want to make sure that we know who the Western Hemisphere fighters are traveling abroad, because the cutting weight coupled with a a long 10-hour flight like that, it requires you get out there early and acclimate. And some of them have, and I don't know exactly which ones have not. But in my target here on these fights, we're looking at guys like, Volkanovski, Chimaev, even Usman. Usman flew from Florida to Abu Dhabi on 4 days' notice to fight Masvidal. So this 2 weeks is not going to be too daunting for Kamaru.
All right. Well, there you go. So that's your answer. I had Brian Edwards on, a mutual friend of ours, and quickly discussed this. I kind of tend to think that if these decisions go to the judges, maybe they do lean more towards their religious prowess and the regional potential bias. I guess I can't guarantee anything, but I've seen crazier things happen in the UFC and other sports, and I'm wondering if that's just obviously not blanketed, but in a general way, I might want to look at my handicapping.
Without question. I mean, when you're seeing an over 2.5, and so that's indicating a high probability that the fight's going to go to decision. Now you got to take a look. If you got two Brazilians, I don't think you have any integrity problem. But if you have a Kazakstani against a Brazilian, or if you have a Russian against a Brazilian, and there is no deeper hatred than Russia and Brazil in the fight game, then and it isn't maybe the judges tainting it. But listen, judges are humans. They're sitting there, they're watching the fight, and they're hearing the crowd. And if it's all the green shirt, the crowd's all for the green shirt, nobody's for the red shirt, then there could easily be a taint in that decision-making process.
All right. Well, that's something we'll definitely keep in mind then for this card. Well, let's get started then. Definitely going to hit the main card and all the fights. But before that, let's pick a prelim to talk about. And I will be honest, I haven't made any pre-flop bets just yet. I plan on listening to you. I already did my first comb through all the fights. I got to do my second, and that's kind of when I can make a little bit more decision on what I'm going to go for. But I'm going to look at this Tim Elliott versus Mumad Makayev fight, and it is the main event of the prelims. And Makayev is a massive minus 400-ish, 440, 450, depends what book you're looking at, favorite under Tim Elliott. Now, I'll be completely honest with you. I was on Tim Elliott in one of his recent fights against, I have to find Tagir Umagulov, I think, right?
Ulanbekov.
Ulanbekov, yeah. I don't even have his name up. I'm just looking at my things refreshing. But hey, and I thought Tagir fought a good fight, but I understand why he lost it. It was really that close. And Elliott's a gamer. He can get up from some of those takedowns, and he gets some strikes in. So I have two inclinations here in this fight. For one, I want to go with my standard one, that is Makayev by decision, because I don't think that Tim Elliott will get subbed necessarily by Makayev. I think he's kind of grown past that. I know he's 19-12-1, and he's been submitted before, but Makayev is a pure wrestler, and this could be a very boring fight too, because I believe he's going to go right for the takedowns immediately. He's not going to mess around and get hit, which is, you know how those fights go, and not the greatest from a spectator standpoint. But if Tim Elliott can get up like he did against Tagir, then I think he's got a shot to land some strikes. And Muhammad does not land a lot of strikes. And I wonder if this thing can go to decision, if this maybe goes to a split decision just based upon that. Now, my worry, of course, like you said, they're going to favor the wrestler. If I have to think that in this region of the world. So the two things I was looking at is, like, maybe I do say this fight, it goes to a split decision, just blanketed in general, which you're going to get some really nice plus money on. And my other side of this is just betting Makayev by decision. What are your thoughts on this fight? And am I going down the right road?
Well, I can't answer that last question until I see the fights, obviously, because I have no crystal ball here. And when you were first uncovering that breakdown, that handicap, I thought you were going to side with Elliott. And as much as I like Tim Elliott, we got to understand there's a substantial difference in age here. And Elliott's a pure fighter, make no mistake about it. But Mokaev, I'll call him, is 23, Elliott 36. And Elliott's awkwardness will be countered by this definite forward pressure by Mokaev. And I think that I overall agree with Mokaev via decision, or the fight goes over, or the fight goes to decision. I think almost a bet for Elliott is those three avenues. He's durable, he's tough, he's very experienced, and I don't think he's been subbed, but I don't think Mokaev is going to sub him. I just worry about Tim's gas tank late with such a young opponent and an ascending opponent. But overall, Mokaev via decision or fight goes to the decision, I would be very comfortable or confident in either.
Yes. Okay. And so over 2.5 rounds is minus 166 here at DK. And Mokaev wins by decision on DraftKings is plus 100. So obviously you need two outcomes to happen. You need the guy that's already at minus 225 to not only to win the fight, right? Minus 425 to win the fight, which that says there's an over 80% chance he wins. And then you need it obviously to go past the 3 rounds. Well, putting those together, I think you're getting better than plus 100. So I'm leaning towards the Mokaev by decision, and I think I'm going to go that route. Split decision, I have to look that up, but you're probably going to get in the plus 300 or plus 400 range usually in that. And I will look that up while I let you choose the next fight from the prelim card, Lou.
Oh, great. So I'm going to try and fade one of the, hand-picked locals. And in this fight, it's in the prelims.
I'll let you pause there. It's plus 550 for fight to be won by split or majority decision. So split or majority. Yeah.
Those are juicy. But that's where I may put the brakes on. I don't think I see Tim getting that close. I think I see him surviving. I just don't think I see split or majority decision. I think Mokaev is. I think this is a favorable position for him.
Okay, I'll stick with my plus 100 on this one then.
Is that what Mokaev is via decision?
Yes, it is.
That's a great price on a good, capable, ascending fighter who's fighting in his region, going to have the whole crowd behind him.
Thank you.
The fight I'll go to is lightweight fights, and the kid from America shipping in 34-year-old Mike Breeden, and he's fighting a fighter that's on his sophomore fight in the UFC, an Indian fighter named Ansul Jubli. I'm just going to call him Mr. Jubli because that's easier for me. Jubli has a couple of inches of height. He's 6 years younger, but he doesn't have a reach advantage. Jubli from India fights pretty erect, really slick, good, solid boxer, has good wrestling. But the other components of mixed martial arts, as far as grappling, BJJ, escape him at this particular evolution. Now, he's fought really sublime competition, but we can't hold that against him. He's fighting out of India, a farm, an embryonic market that the UFC is dying to develop, and that's why they have this guy on this card. Now, when we look at his opponent in Breeden, we see that the guy's had 3 UFC fights and 3 UFC losses, 2 of those in the first round. So it's easy to expect, UFC brought Breeden in here to be a subject for Jubli. And I think that's kind of the case. However, we got to peel the handicap back a little bit. Breeden, the 3 guys he's fought, Alex Hernandez, the young wrestler Nathan Levy, that was a 3-round decision. No shame in that loss. And then lastly, Terrence McKinney, a fight that ended in the first round, but there were all kinds of footnotes to that. That fight arguably ended early. And so this young kid, Breeden, knows that the organization is setting him up. That said, he's 0 for 3. He's getting a fourth fight. He's turned it into the organization likes what I do and they're giving me another chance. This kid's 34, fighting for his life. His back's against the wall, and he comes in a little bit with a chip because that last fight against McKinney he didn't get a chance to showcase himself. He's been in with tremendously better competition than the young man Jubilee, and who he's been in with are elite fighters. At this price, Jubilee minus 300 or 290 and Breeden plus 250, I just can't wait for this fight. I think that Breeden is in a position to deliver young Jubilee his PhD in MMA because he's been in with better, his back's against the wall, he's fighting for his life. At least I know with a plus 250 underdog, I'm going to get every ounce of effort from young Mr. Breeden.
Wow, I love those angles. And yes, this does smell like a setup by him coming in to bust it. And you just, calling that out makes me excited, man. Oh, yeah. You look at Jubilee, he hasn't fought in anybody, and he has a split decision in the UFC road to the UFC back in 2022 with Pyo Kim. It's not like anybody big. That's such a great find for you, because I was looking at this fight and I was just thinking, I don't even know what to do with this. I kind of passed on it, but now I can kind of see the angle here. Breeden fighting for his life here. He's just going to give it his complete all. And if you think that fight ended early just based upon McKinney, throwing some really quick strikes, sometimes they'll stop it even though there's not enough damage. I can't remember on August 12th. I was out of town, I think, that weekend, but it was this could be a great situation for him. And you wonder also if Jubilee is going to take more money later for parlays and things, and you might get Breeden at a little bit better of a price there, Lou.
That's a great point. And for all dogs, especially, I don't think there are even any dogs from that region of the country, but for your dogs, it does usually pay to wait. In this case, when I saw Breeden 250, that was well enough for me, and I took it. Now, if the price goes up, I can always add more, but I didn't want to lose what I thought was a really excellent offering.
Excellent offer. Great find. All right. Well, I cannot wait to watch this prelim. Let's move on to the main card then. And obviously, if we have a little time at the end, maybe we'll talk about another prelim, but we'll go to Saeed Nurmagomedov versus Muin. I believe it's Gafarov, but I might have mispronounced him, and that happens from time to time when we're talking some UFC, Lou. So please feel free to correct me if needed. Saeed is minus 225.
Right, and there are two, and I'm going to try and say it right, Tajikistani fighters on the card. These guys, that country is a voracious fight country. These guys, when they arrive, they're aggressive, they're determined, and maybe they're a little bit raw. Surely that area of the country, they're grappling, wrestling based, but they throw with tremendous power, with tremendous grit, and almost every bit of energy they have behind their strikes. And that's what Saeed Nurmagomedov is in against. And in this fight between the two Tajikistani athletes, this is the one I think that I have less opinion on. I think Saeed Nurmagomedov is more of a fade fighter. He's not that wrestler grappler. He's a little bit more long, lanky striker, and therefore his size, his length makes it tough for me to like Muin in this spot. I think this is a fight I'll avoid, but I do lean to Nurmagomedov in decision fashion here.
Decision. Okay, well, he's had 8 decisions. He hasn't gotten to the he hasn't gotten the sub all the time. I always kind of look at the Nurmagomedov as, he always looks sub first and stuff like that. So
yeah, not this one. This one's a striker.
Yeah,
just to throw a monkey wrench into it for us.
Well, he lost to Jonathan Martinez Martinez, who I was wrong last week. I thought that was going over 2.5 with you against Yanez, and he just kicked the crap out of his leg so hard that Yanez could even continue in that fight, Lou. And I really thought that was one of my tightest caps coming into last week, but I am absolutely surprised that Jonathan Martinez is this good. And I have to remember that. And I don't know if the market will catch up to him right away for his next fight, but I have him written down to take a look at his prices as soon as that comes out.
Yeah, I was disappointed that Yanez didn't know what was coming. Jonathan Martinez, it's no secret he has bludgeoning leg kicks. How Adrian didn't address it is beyond me. But Martinez, I had used the week earlier, Kiev, a parlay that tied into Yanez, and then when we got it, and it missed. The first leg did. And so then when we got to the fight, I was thinking, well, I'll just take Yanez straight. And the more handicapping I did, I couldn't. That's why I ended up on the over. And I agree with you. I felt very strong about the over here based on Yanez. I knew Martinez was durable. And we learn a lesson, record the loss and move forward.
Absolutely. And you can get Saeed by sub or decision at -150 at DK. If you did just sub, it's +250. If you did just decision, it's +180. So that -150 doesn't seem too steep for me. So I'm going to look a little deeper into that one, pay a little juice. And if I think that's the correct outcome of the fight, I will possibly fire on that one. Let's move on to the next fight in the card. And wow, this is where Warley Alves is coming in from Brazil as a big dog, +450 against Ikram Aliskerov. And you look at this fight, I believe that Warley has definitely been through plenty of wars, but I mean, I also wonder if Ikram is priced based upon his venue, being that this is -600. I mean, this is a very large juice to lay, and I usually don't lay anything. I don't even put -600s in my parlays, Lou. But what are your thoughts on this one?
My thoughts are that this is right now in the desert area of Phoenix. We're planting what we call winter grass. And so you come in and you seed your lawn, you put manure on it, and all this spring little grass comes up thick and fast in 2 weeks. So 2 weeks, I'm going to have all this grass I'm going to have to cut. I'm going to get I have a good, powerful mower in the back that's a Honda, and it's going to saw through that grass, and that's exactly what Askarov's going to do to Alves. This is the epitome of a setup fight. Alves has lost his last few. They're bringing him in to be a subject, and this fighter that he's fighting, Aliskerov, is the real deal. This is a complete mismatch. I'd looked at Aliskerov inside the distance somehow or another, and based on his price, even that's going to be a negative number. So this is probably another fight I'm not looking to really invest in.
I wrote that down. I wrote Ikram by inside the distance, but I mean, geez, we're probably laying -200 minimum in this situation. I'm trying to find it. So KO, TKO, or DQ, or submission is basically inside the distance. It's -450, Lou.
Yeah, no bargain there, but that's a winning ticket. Maybe you use that in a parlay, but I do believe that's what's going to happen in this fight.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It is a mismatch. Absolutely. It's definitely a mismatch. Probably don't need to talk a lot about this one because this, like you said, is a setup fight, but I don't care what the motivation is for Warley. He's just getting in there, getting a paycheck, and he's probably already got his flight booked out of there to get back home and collect that money. And I don't know if the UFC is going to put up with him too much longer, but it is what it is. I just can't see him beating Ikram unless something.
He came with a lot of hype and has never really lived up to it. I know we'll get a good effort from him, but it's just really, really tough for BJJ practitioners to deal with the Russian vice grips simply because of gas and cardio. There tends to be way more on the Russian side, and the Brazilians can sometimes, after 2 rounds of toil, begin to look for the door.
All right. Well, speaking of a lot of hype, this next fight, there was a lot of hype on Johnny Walker, and he kind of became a little glass jawed. And then all of a sudden, his last 3 fights, he becomes who he should have been from the start. And Johnny Walker's at plus 275 here, Brazilian, fighting Magomed Ankalaev. Now, Lou, my problem with Magomed is he's a frustrating fighter to watch. You know, you want him to put it on when you think he should be putting it on. He's tough. He stands up. He presses forward, but he's always just 1-2 jabbing and doesn't use his wrestling at all. Really, he's you would think with his name that he would be much more of a wrestler. He can do it, and now he's fighting a guy that can certainly throw with him with a 7-inch reach advantage. I used to call him Glass Jaw Johnny Walker. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep calling him that, because of what he did in his last fight against Anthony Smith, who I actually had respect for Anthony Smith up to the level of Magomed Ankalaev. I think they just fought recently. Was that the one that Smith broke his leg? I'll have to relook at that one. Yeah, I think that was the one where he might have broke his foot on. I have to look back. But either way, I mean, this is a pretty large favorite here against a guy that is just kind of trying to prove himself in Johnny Walker, and Magomed steps down to his competition when he fights. I mean, this is one that you would think if it goes to decision, it's going to favor Magomed, and lots of his fights do go to decision, but there's a little tiny part of me that says maybe Johnny Walker finally gets a KO on this guy. What are your thoughts on this one?
My thoughts are that Johnny Walker arrives a much more mature fighter, a much more refined fighter. And I almost wonder sometimes if some of the patience they've instilled in him and some of the refinement that they've allowed him to start to practice with takes away some of the heart and soul of really who this kid is. And I think his best effort in this fight would be to come out and be flamboyant and be crazy and throw. As I look at this fight, the avenue for Johnny Walker to win is to catch Ankalaev coming in. To me, that's how he wins. He's not winning a decision against Ankalaev, because Ankalaev is going to come in, get a hold of him, take him down, get on top, and take him out. So my position on this fight is Ankalaev inside the distance. I can get a fighter minus 375 for minus 110. I think Johnny Walker is a brassy guy to take this fight. He's not afraid. It's not going to be an easy fight for Ankalaev. It's a terrible matchup for Johnny Walker.
Yeah, if he can't connect, it will be a long fight for him. But I also wonder that, Ankalaev doesn't always put his fighters away. Ankalaev by decision is plus 225. Ankalaev by KO is plus 100. So the price is agreeing with you completely on this. If Johnny Walker somehow just outlands him, I mean, then you're looking at massive prices on him, plus 750 by decision. I'm not sure if Magomed can be knocked out, and I don't think the judge is going to let him be knocked out, even if he's in trouble with a crowd like that behind him.
Well, with Johnny, Johnny don't knock you out on accumulation. It's going to be a spinning kick, and he's going to be out like a light. So there's no judge going to interfere with that. If Johnny gets him, he's putting him out. And if he doesn't, I think he's going to get rubbed out. I just don't see enough well-rounded nature in Johnny Walker, even though he's big and he's long and he's tall. He's got no takedown defense, and Ankalaev is going to get inside on him, I think.
Yeah, let's hope so. And Ankalaev has 0 submissions, 8 decisions, 9 KOs. His only loss was a long time ago, back to Paul Craig. Who is the good fighter that doesn't lose to Paul Craig? I mean, John Mahal did.
That was in the last 2 seconds of that fight. I mean, that was that was his debut in the UFC. And in the interviews this week, Johnny Walker has been calm, cool, and collected. He's ready to fight, knows what he's walking into, and for that I tip my hat to him. Meanwhile, Ankalaev's talking much more aggressive and talking about finishes. I think we're going to see PO'd Ankalaev, who's tired of hearing that he laid an egg against Jan Blachowicz.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, he's probably going to definitely react to those. That's all over the place. That he should have fought. He should have been better and won the championship, right? Won the belt on that fight. So, you know what? I think I might go two ways. I might go Walker KO for the plus 600, and I might go Magomed by decision for plus 225. Either I'm getting two outcomes for plus money. The blended odds are going to be nice and high. It's going to be plus if you want to blend the odds together. Sure, if Magomed does get him inside the distance, I mean, at least I'm looking at a 3-round fight. So I'm going to lean towards that, Lou. And, hopefully if you're winning, you're winning. I take those blended odds and I say, you know what? I don't care who wins. It's just I have two certain types of outcomes here, and maybe it'll come to fruition. But go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't execute that way usually, meaning two different sides on the same fight, but I surely agree that those are the two likely outcomes, and I wouldn't ever criticize anyone for taking that route. I know if I took it, that naturally what would happen was Ankalaev would finish him and I'd be all upset. So rather than do that to myself, I usually will find one angle, just try and live with it. But I definitely agree with that approach.
Yeah, and the only way I do it is I cut my unit in half, so I'm not losing two larger bets. I'm losing two smaller ones if that happens. I'll certainly be rooting for Johnny by the KO here, and I'm starting to kind of like him. So we'll see what happens. But moving on to the co-main event, and man, has this one become big? Khamzat Chimaev versus Kamaru Usman, and you and I have been talking about Khamzat for a while. Khamzat was on him early. Then, of course, the price gets worse and worse on him. And then I find myself betting Khamzat inside the distance, and I'm cashing on those. And until that one recent fight that he actually almost lost. And then you have Kamaru Usman I've lost money on fading him in the welterweight division. And I thought Colby was going to get him once, and I was wrong about that. And he's burned some of my money. I've won on one guy, I've lost on the other guy, but I realize why I've lost on this guy. It's because he's amazing, one of the best in history in the welterweight division. But this ain't welterweight no more. Khamzat can't make welterweight, and Kamaru has probably been eating some potato chips, and I'm sure he's up to around the 280. I'm excited for weigh-ins just to see where this ends up at. I bet you Khamzat is right at the weight, and I would doubt if Usman is pretty close himself. But Lou, I'll let you get started on this one, and we'll see if we align.
Yeah, good fight. This and the main event, you have the unknown of the short notice. And so for both fighters, Volkanovski and Usman, I'm going to say on their worst day, on the second week of their 2-week vacation, they're still in shape to fight. These guys are fighters. They stay in shape. Volkanovski doesn't ever get out of shape. Usman doesn't get out of shape. Are they in tip-top condition? No. Have they had a 5-week training camp? No. And so in the case of Usman and Chimaev, we have the Chimaev who hasn't fought in 13 months. Mostly and normally that would be an eyebrow raiser to me, except for one thing. He's been doing that to appropriately put on the weight to compete for 3 or 5 full rounds at 185 pounds. Chimaev has the benefit of a full camp, and he's prepared for this weight class for some time, albeit for another opponent. And the opponent change is substantial. Now, Usman, on his side, we don't know what he was doing. We know he didn't fall too far out of shape. We know he took a flight on 4 days to compete with Gil Burns, and he blasted Gil Burns. And Gil Burns competed with Chimaev, albeit at 170, the lighter weight. Did that weight compromise Chimaev? Possibly. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a prepared Chimaev with 13 months to get ready for a 185-pound fight against a guy in Usman fighting up a weight class on short notice, traveling across the world. I think it's a tall task to ask of Usman. I see the 1.5 shaded under to minus 166, or is that a 2.5? Let me just check that, please. 2.5 under minus 166 in Chimaev and Usman. I don't think I can agree with that price on the under. And if a gun was to my head, I'm taking over 2.5 plus 130. And I may even get greedy and look for that fight to go to decision, which would be even higher than plus 130. I can't discredit Usman to think that Chimaev's going to run right through him.
100%. And what's funny about Khamzat is I've loved how he just destroyed the competition, but they both did fight Burns, and Burns did better against Khamzat. He cut him, and maybe he had to really struggle, get down to 171 in that weight. And now it probably bothered him some, but yeah, he was cut, and Usman took care of him easier. Now, we always don't go A plus B is C, obviously, when it comes to handicapping, but I mean, let's face it, Khamzat's a psycho. He's absolutely different breed than anybody I've seen in a long time. He's scary. He's strong as an ox, and he just can't keep. He couldn't not grow at his age. He's not even, he's not even up to his, I guess, his prime yet. In my opinion, I think he's still, growing at 29 years old. I think he's going to hit his prime at 32, and you might even see him in the light heavyweight division taking some people out. What's funny though? I have so much respect for Kamaru Usman. This fight bothers me more than Khamzat fighting Izzy. I'm not going to lie. I really think that I'm more scared of Usman than Izzy in this situation. In a lot of situations. But here's another thing. I think that if there was a fighter, and this is for both the main event and this co-main event, that could beat these guys, it is these two guys. Now, I really like what you said about them staying in shape, and especially for the main event. I'm going to make that point again. I think they're in shape, and I think they're going to get back in shape quickly, where they're not older men. They can bounce pretty quickly and get back in shape. But Khamzat has been waiting for a title shot. This is the person that's in his way right now. He just couldn't keep the weight at 171. He's still very motivated, and Usman has shown a little bit of compromising in his jaw. Now, there's been fights with Usman that I thought he's lost, and he was the boring guy holding the fighter because he was just that much stronger on the cage. He's done that a few times. I think he's done that to Colby his whole time. He's done that to Woodley. He's went to decision many times where you're like, why hasn't Usman finished this guy? Well, he's a smart fighter, and he's hard to take down, 97% takedown defense. But if there's a guy that can take him down, and I think that Khamzat might be a little bit stronger now. I do like what you said about the over 2.5. And I wasn't even thinking that. I was more thinking Khamzat by decision based upon the location. But over 2.5, if you're getting plus money, you really got to look at that, because Usman is tough. He cannot be subbed, and he is going to be watching for that knockout punch. He's going to be careful about it. It happened to him against Edwards with that head kick, and he's going to be extra careful about it. But guess what? That was in the 5th round with 4 minutes passed. This is a 3-round fight, correct? A 3-round fight. So this is a no-brainer to me that these guys should go up to past 2.5 rounds, possibly even by decision. I love it over 2.5, but I might also be playing Khamzat by decision, Lou.
I would have no argument Khamzat via decision whatsoever. You wanna take a parlay and use Khamzat with Eliskarov, and you got 2 ridiculously stupid high chalks, and then maybe you go find somebody closer to pick, or as Trevor Peaks about a minus 150, minus 160 on the undercard. You take those 2 big chalk with someone else, and you can really enhance your odds on that third fighter. That third fighter will probably be chronologically the first one that goes. So if you can win that, arguably you have the 3-teamer already set with those 2 big chalks, and squeeze some value that way.
Yeah, you've been doing great with that from fight to fight, doing it this fight, looking ahead to the next fight, getting a nice price on it before the line moves. I love that strategy that you've been doing. And here's Chris, one of our mutual friends. Can he spell the names he's using? I can't, Chris. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but it's very hard to spell these names. But
I can
Either way,
spell
buddy.
every one of them as long as you're going to let me use my cheat sheet right here where I have. I can spell them, but I can't pronounce them. And really, we're talking about these setup parlays and everything, Kiev. I mean, the guy that taught me that was our friend Chris. So I'll footnote him.
It's funny. You have legal size paper for your notes. I love it. Your notes are so long that Lou uses legal size paper.
Well, I mean, I got to give 15 fights on the card, and there's a lot of information I'm recording. Most people use Excel and computers, and they see a guy like me, and they're like, man, this guy's using notes on pigeons and smoke signals. And you know what? To that, I say you're exactly right.
Yeah. And by the way, shout out to Lou going to the Diamondbacks Phillies game today. We had to move the podcast a little bit back for it, but I'm very excited for Lou to go to a big playoff game in the NLCS. That is a big game, and any baseball fan should be going to this, whether you're a Diamondbacks fan or not. And congrats, Lou. I hope you have a couple cocktails before you head up there.
I'm leaving after the podcast, and I want to just say publicly, thank you for shuffling for me. That was really nice, and it's going to allow me to go have a great time, see the first game, get home, and watch football and baseball playoffs in October. It doesn't get any better.
Does not get any better. And of course, man, you do so much for us here. We love it, and real excited for you to go. Hopefully, it's a great game. But what I know that could be a great match is the main event here coming on up with Islam Makhachev against Volkanovski. And kind of piggybacking on what I was saying before, I think that Volkanovski is the most dangerous fighter for Islam, and we kind of proved that last fight. There's people that say if there was different judges, they would have went more by damage, which Islam looked more beat up. He was just kind of bear hugging him, wrestling him, and I've always said Volkanovski cannot be subbed because he has no neck, and so that's another reason that worries me for Islam. I've been on Islam since his inception too. He was my probably number 1 or number 2 moneymaker with him and Kamzat, over the last 3-4 years coming up. And then eventually you have to get on Islam inside the distance. Then you've got to be like, okay, is he going to sub him here? And I think I lost when he knocked out Green instead of, he obviously straddled him and got up and, and ground and pounded him. But Volkanovski in America, this fight, I might be looking at him even a little bit more here. Volkanovski many times has mentioned, I'm coming off the couch type thing. And, you're not coming off the couch. And the fact that you're mentioning it so much, Volk, I bet you're in tip-top shape. So don't BS me here. But what I do think is that Volkanovski is just a rock, and he's hard to beat. And you won't be able to get on top of him, and he'll fight to the death. He's not tapping. He's not subbing. It would be up to the ref if he got somehow in a compromised position. But what I will say is that this fight is in Abu Dhabi, and Islam has prepared, and Islam probably was embarrassed, and Islam has one of the best eagle fighting on his back with obviously what some people say one of the best fighters in Khabib Nurmagomedov himself, right? So he's got a lot of backing. He's at home. I even think that even if Volkanovski can last with Islam, they're not going to give them the win. And it's just going to be one of those frustrating situations where you think that the judges have been looking more towards damage lately. And maybe these judges don't do that this time unless there's some serious shenanigans going on. What I wrote down is Islam by decision, but it's always dangerous to do that too, Lou, because you have a fighter, if he's truly coming off the couch, he's a 5-round fight. This goes against some of my principles of handicapping when a guy comes off the couch that he's going to go to decision or even get there. But I will say that Islam has been knocked out before. It was a long time ago, back in 2015. I've seen him close to knocked out a couple times before the recent fights. He's been a little dazed. Arman Sarukham, I'm sure, wrestled him and fought him really hard back in 2019. I remember watching that fight, and that's when I really started liking Sarukham after that. But Islam isn't invincible, and Volkanovski's stepping up in weight a little bit, but Volkanovski is the poison to Islam. I might be betting Islam by decision. What are your thoughts on this one?
My thoughts are that this fight and the other fight are two fights that I stand to learn much more from than really wagering, and my card will be complete by the time main and co-main come. If I have investment in either of those two fights, they'll be nominal. But what I believe is that From what I've seen from Volkanovski, he's never that far out of shape. He's loose, he's fresh, he's ready to go. And I believe he takes a different approach in this fight in that he goes immediately out a la Tasmanian Devil. On the other side, we got Makhachev, who's all he's heard was he's 145 pounds. He took you into the 5th round and he wobbled you. Or he beat you in a split decision. You got lucky, you got the decision. And that decision was in Australia, by the way. Now he has to listen to the fact that Volkanovski comes in and only comes in with 14 days notice, and there's already a built-in excuse. All this is pissing him off. And I think that he is the man that's the legitimate 155er. He's the man with the full camp. And if I just stop there, I have to give advantage to Makhachev. That said, when they told Makhachev that it wasn't Oliveira and it was going to be Volkanovski, I guarantee you he saw that, they saw that, we see that as a tougher challenge for Makhachev. Makhachev sees it that way too. Now, he's saying all the right things, and he's really uptight, tight-lipped, somber, stoic during this week, all his interviews and everything. It's my belief that this fight has no effing way of going the decision. No way. That's my position.
Okay, well, there you go. That's an interesting creative handicap right there, just based upon the motivations, the situation with Volk coming off the couch and the somberness of Islam during his interviews coming through this week. So
now, excuse me for interrupting, Kevin, but what I will say is each of these guys so badly wants to finish the other that it isn't impossible that we see the exact same fight we saw the first time, which is what you're going at. So again, I don't have a crystal ball, but I don't see the first fight again. I see someone is finishing the other guy.
Yes, yeah, that could happen, and it's 5 rounds, so you got a lot of extra time for that to come to fruition. I might not have a play on this. You know what's funny? I want to watch this fight so bad that I don't necessarily want an ulterior side on it because I don't have to, Lou. We can pick and choose to when to be a fan, and we can pick and choose when to bet. And this one has just so much uncertainty, maybe, and so much just going by the last fight of how close that really was. I'm going to be a fan on it. I think I'm just going to enjoy this one, bud. Let's do that. Let's enjoy it.
Yeah. My profit will be made or lost before those 2 fights. Now, if I'm a couple units ahead and want to try and get cute, but maybe I get cute, and I mean, even a Makhachev parlay to Chimaev it's a negative proposition, so that's not an option. So maybe again, sometimes the best bet is the one not made, and maybe we just watch those 2 and learn.
I will say one thing. If it was anyone else but the 145, the champion from the featherweight, if it was anyone else like Charles, Gaethje, Poirier, Beneil Dariush, Chandler, Gamrot, I would be on Islam in some fashion. But I'm more scared of the guy that's in the lighter class just because of the way he fights, the tenacity, the size of his neck, the ferocity of him, the fact that he is Russian, he can wrestle. This is scary for me. If I'm going to fade Volk, it's going to be when Ilia Topuria fights him. It's not going to be right now, my friend. And I hope to see that one coming up because that's my next big excitement coming in for a matchup, Lou. Well, okay, man, we killed it. You went through all these great fights. I really appreciate you, everything you do for us here at the Odds Breakers. I'm so excited for you to go to the game today. I'll be watching it myself. Hopefully you'll get on camera or something. But where could our listeners get your wonderful information and media?
Well, Kiev, thanks so much. I watch all your pods. I keep an eye on you on Twitter. The Odds Breakers do great work, offer great content. As far as me, Lou at gamblu.com for direct email. Gamblu.com is the webpage, daily blogs, all kinds of information. And soon enough, the About Business podcast will only be available on the Gamblu webpage. That's coming at the first of the year. And of course, don't forget, Friday morning early, we'll have the About Business podcast, which is my final releases for this UFC card. Those will be up by about 9 or 10 in the morning. But if you've listened to this podcast, my releases are not going to be much different than what you just listened to.
All right. Well, great stuff. Make sure you check out the About Business podcast every single Friday after the weigh-ins. Lou, have a blast today. We'll be texting.
Thanks so much, and enjoy the fights, Kiev, and everyone listening. Good luck.